How do I get an A on my persuasive essay? Essays seem really hard, but actually there is a pretty straightforward formula that historians use all the time to write. Today, I'll let you in on the secret so you can ace your next essay. Every essay has three main parts, and you can expand the parts to be as big or as small as your assignment. Part 1, the introduction, Part 2, body paragraphs, or the evidence, and Part 3, conclusion. For today's example, we'll answer the question, what was the main cause of the American Revolution? Part 1, the introduction. For each introduction that you write, you need two things, the historical context of the topic and a claim or thesis statement. They are two words for the same thing. Who knew? I always like to remember that the historical context answers the who, what, when, where, and why of the time period that you are studying. So for the American Revolution, we would want to begin by saying that the American Revolution began in 1776 when the 13 colonies banded together to declare their independence from the British. This declaration came after years of unhappiness with the British rule and the lack of voice that American colonists felt at home in their mother country. Historical context done. Booyah! Next comes the all-important claim statement. Remember, it's also called a thesis statement. Claim statements answer the question that you have been asked. These usually take 1 to 2 sentences to answer, and you can use the question stem to start your answer. You should give a reason in your claim statement that you can back up later with evidence. Sometimes, people like to give 2 or 3 reasons that will help guide them for the rest of their essay. We'll get to body paragraphs later. For this example, to answer the question, what was the main cause of the American Revolution, my claim statement would be, despite all of the conflicts that were brewing between America and Great Britain, the main reason that the American Revolution was started was because the British passed the Intolerable Acts of 1774. The reasons that I'll use later in my essay will come from the Intolerable Acts. So to recap, the two important parts of any introduction are the historical context and the claim statement. The second part of the essay is the body paragraph. The body paragraph is where you prove that you are right. You do this using accurate historical evidence. Sometimes you'll be given it, as in a DBQ, or sometimes you'll have to find it yourself. Each body paragraph that you write will have 3 main parts. Part 1 is the topic sentence, Part 2 is using evidence, and Part 3 is analyzing the evidence. There will only be 1 topic sentence in each body paragraph. The topic sentence for our practice essay will be, one of the intolerable acts that American colonists found very offensive was the Quartering Act. Obviously, this body paragraph will only be about the Quartering Act. Now I need some specific evidence to back this up. So I'm going to use a quotation about the Quartering Act that will help me to show that the American colonists were really mad. It's important that before I use a quotation, I explain where the quotation comes from and why it's important. Here I go. The Quartering Act was first instituted in 1765, almost a decade before the Intolerable Acts. At the time, the New York legislature wrote a letter to the British Parliament arguing against the act, saying that by marching several regiments into this colony, this expense would become ruinous and insupportable. Boom. I've used a quote and my history teacher is happy. But what will make her really happy is if I explain how this proves my point that the American colonists were mad and this was one of the major causes of the revolution. This is called analysis of evidence. Here I go with our example again. This is important to understanding the main cause of the American Revolution because the Quartering Act of 1774 was even more strict than the first version. If Americans were opposed to the first act because of how expensive it would be, then they would be certainly even more upset the second time around. See how I explained why the Americans would be mad rather than assuming the reader would know the answer? I came out and pointed out the part about it being too expensive. If I really wanted to earn an A, I would introduce and explain a second piece of evidence about the Quartering Act. Shh, I'll let you in on a secret. Not all evidence has to be a quote. I could describe an image such as a photograph or a political cartoon or even summarize something that happened. Write as many or as few body paragraphs as you need to prove your point. A lot of times when we start out, we write a 5-paragraph essay, so that means 3 body paragraphs, and say it with me, 6 total pieces of evidence. Don't forget to link each piece of evidence back to your original claim. Phew, we are almost there. Last but not least is the conclusion. There are 2 parts, summary and something interesting. You've been told before to summarize your arguments in your conclusion, but this should be really short, like really short, because we literally just read them and we are smart people. So you can re-explain, but that really only gets to be 2 sentences tops. In our practice example, I would say, American colonists were on the road to the Revolutionary War long before the Revolution happened. The intolerable acts, including the Quartering Act, were really the spark. Notice that I did not use the same words as before. No copy-paste. What you should really focus your time on in your conclusion is saying something interesting about the topic. You have a golden opportunity here to make a leap of logic that you don't even have to come up with a quote to prove. I'm going to say something interesting about how it is important for governments to listen to their people and not to punish them harshly when they are upset. By doing this, I am showing the audience that I've understood what I've written up to this point, and I am able to connect it to something larger than the original topic. Here it is. The American Revolution demonstrates an important lesson for all governments. There will be times when citizens are unhappy and will use forms of protest to explain their unhappiness. It is important to maintain unity in the country and avoid a war, for governments to listen to their citizens rather than punishing them. If they punish a whole country too harshly, they risk losing them forever. See how much more interesting that is than repeating yourself? I brought you to a whole new idea at the end that made something old like the American Revolution relevant today. And now you know the secrets to writing a great persuasive essay. Let's recap. Introductions have historical context and a claim that answers the questions with reasons. Body paragraphs have a topic sentence, 2 pieces of evidence, and 2 explanations, called analysis of evidence. And conclusions quickly recap and then they say something interesting. And now you are on your way to earning an A.